Chapter 45. Priya. No, Razia said, voice like iron. Empress, I cannot. My guardswoman will not. You call me Empress and still refuse me. Malini shook her head. Lady Razia, I have good reason. Why would you refuse our protection? Razia demanded. The battle to take Hashingar will be dangerous beyond compare, Empress. Why would you send us to the back of the battlefield to fight like cowards? You saw what the bloodbath took place on the ferry, said Malini. All the more reason to allow us to protect you. Razia made a sweeping gesture with her hand. If you insist on going without the defense we can offer, at least keep Elder Priya by your side in battle. Internally, Priya agreed, but for now she watched with interest, keeping her silence. Malini shook her head. No, she said. I have a plan. It isn't for you to understand it now. Razia's eyes sharpened with irritation. Empress, she began. Lady Razia, said Malini. When this war ends, I want your women to train my personal guard. I want my guardswomen of my own. And I want to learn how to use a bow with my own 2 hands. Priya looked at her hands, those soft, uncalloused, cruel hands. I spoke to a priest in secrecy, Malini went on, and now I am telling you, if you are at my side in this war, none of that will come to pass. If you have faith in the mothers, please, ask me no more. Razia pursed her lips but finally relented. The women left and Priya remained. If anyone thought anything of it, they did not say so. Though Lady Deepa's gaze lingered on Priya, curious, before she turned her head and departed. Malini's eyes met her own. Tell me the truth, Priya said simply. The priests have offered me an alliance, Malini said, and Rao has returned to Saketa to advise my brother. I did not lie about that. So they'll give you their support, Priya said. All those priests of the mothers, just like that. Yes. For nothing in return, Priya pressed. She knew there was something else here that Malini hadn't spoken of yet. Razia had rightly sensed it. They all had. Oh, they want something, Malini said. She went abruptly silent. In Malini's position, Priya would have paced the floor. As it was, she could barely keep still. Her body was raw, bright with feeling. She could have run, or howled, or grown a tree to splinter the soil. But instead, she clutched her own knees and kept her attention on Malini, who looked as brittle as glass and just as sharp. The conversation with the priest had clearly shaken her. Priya waited, and eventually Malini spoke again. They want me to burn, willingly, Malini said. Priya's heart gave a thud. Malini. I told them I would. She raised a hand silencing Priya before Priya could protest, could tell her what foolishness that was. I lied, Priya, she said. I will never allow myself to burn. But all this, demanding I release the priest who wanted me dead, detouring to this temple, even meeting the so-called faceless son alone, all of it was the test of my willingness to bend to their orders, to do things unthinkingly and obediently. And I have done it. They have every reason to believe me and every reason to give me their backing in return. A twist to her mouth. They think I'll make a fine puppet, a good, pure, and righteous puppet. But why? Priya asked, bewildered and horrified. What would your burning give them? Malini looked into her eyes. Faith is strange and powerful, she said. Think of what was done to your faith by your own elders. Passing through the waters did give me power, Priya pointed out, even as the bitterness of that settled over her. And Divyanshi's burning did bless Parijatvipa, as did the deaths of all the mothers, Malini said levelly. Their belief in the value of my death is not untrue. That doesn't make it any less monstrous, Priya whispered. No, Malini's eyes finally lowered. No. I don't trust your priests, Priya said, but then why would I? I don't trust my priests. Malini swayed and then exhaled, turning her body so that she was leaning against Priya. It startled Priya, almost that sudden yielding, the weight of Malini against her, Malini tucking her feet close to her body, resting a hand against Priya's arm. They've asked me for another act of faith, Malini whispered against her skin. The warmth of her breath, the tightness of her shoulders, all of it made Priya want to curl over her, shield her, hold her like a shell around a vulnerable yoke. When we attack Arshingar, I am going to fight with all my strength. But if all else fails, if the fire is too much for my army, I fear it will be, Priya, I'm going to allow myself to be captured, taken to Chandra. Malini, Priya said, heart thudding. That, I know. It's a trap. Surely it's a trap. I know, said Malini, voice a little muffled against Priya. But perhaps it's not. You're not the kind of person who takes wild risks, Priya said, helpless at the thought of it, of Malini handing herself meekly over for slaughter. What do you even know about this priest? That he has connections and power, and hungers for more, Malini murmured. That he cannot gain more power under Chandra. I remember the priests Chandra raised up, all Parijati by blood and rearing. This faceless son still has a Sakitan inflection to his voice. He cannot hide it. That he has nonetheless risen so far shows his ambition. He fears losing his position, but he is willing to do it for the sake of that ambition, and his ideals. Ideals? Oh, he dreams of what Chandra dreams of, a better Parijatvipa reshaped by faith. But their understandings of what fate should build, that is different. Better for Chandra means a world that fits him and his desires. Better for a priest from Saketa, well, Priya could feel Malini's smile against her skin, the anger in it. He will not find that with Chandra. Maybe handing you to Chandra will give him what he wouldn't get otherwise, Priya managed. Malini, I'm no good at politics or the games you have to play, but this, you cannot do this. I've considered my options, said Malini, and this is the best path. We can perhaps, take Harshingar on the throne, but I cannot keep it if the priests of the mothers refuse to serve me. Kartik is the key, Priya, and this is the price he demands of me. You should negotiate with him then. Get a more reasonable price. It's so clear you've never haggled at a market, Priya added in a mutter. That coaxed a true, unguarded laugh out of Malini. The sound made Priya's heart ache. That's the problem. Faith doesn't allow for negotiation, only obedience. I am a temple elder, said Priya. I think I know all about faith, more than you even. He's only human. He can be negotiated with. There was something Priya couldn't understand about this. Something driving Malini, something making her press her fingers into the fabric that covered Priya's stomach, her breath soft against Priya's shoulder. Malini had made this decision, but Priya was sure there had to be reasons beyond the ones she'd given her. You're not an obedient person, Priya said, instead of interrogating Malini, instead of trying to pry the real truth out of her. No, Malini was silent for a moment. You're going to have to trust that I understand the priests of the mothers, she said quietly. You're going to have to believe that I know their ways and how to manage them. I know what you are, said Priya. I know you understand people, but Malini, this kind of risk. I'm going to have faith, am I? In me? Yes. Priya closed her eyes. I don't think I like faith very much. Behind the closed lids of her eyes, in that brief darkness, she saw the Sangam and the Yaksa and felt an echo of fear run through her. She pushed it away. She couldn't examine it now. And you, a temple elder, Malini was saying, an expert on faith. Don't throw my own words back at me, Malini. Then don't ask me to change my nature. There was a hint of true smile in her voice now. It made Priya want to see her face, so Priya gave in to the impulse to touch her fingertips to Malini's cheek. She moved her hand to Malini's jaw, urged her chin up with a light nudge on her fingers. Malini moved easily with her. Their eyes met. If Priya had thought seeing Malini's face would give her answers, well, Malini had always been good at hiding what she felt, but there was a tenderness in her eyes, her expression so gentle it made Priya's heart hurt. What do you need from me? Priya asked. If you're going to be foolish, how can I help you?" "Foolish," Malini repeated. "Of course you're being foolish," said Priya, "but I can't stop you. I could try to be captured with you, I suppose, but that's not what you want, is it?" Malini's smile faded. "I don't want you with me when I'm taken. That battle is mine to fight. I want you to stay with the army. Khalil is canny and Prakash is experienced. Narayan has a good sense of how to manage the rifts between the Sakatan princes and lords and keep their forces whole. Between their combined might we stand a chance of taking Harshingar, but our chance is slim. Chandra is prepared. He knows my army has been sorely depleted. He has the unnatural fire, but I have you. If all else fails, Priya, if there is nothing else to be done, then I must ask you to act, to use what you are and help my army win." Malini held her tighter, an almost reflexive clench of her fingers on cloth. "If I die, or I'm lost, at least I'll know you won't allow my brother to hold his throne." "You can't put so much faith in me," Priya said immediately. "I can't live up to what you think I am," she thought. "And I told you, I showed you, the fire can hurt me." "There are Aloran forces that can be spared to protect," said Malini, "or Sakatan. Whatever you want, Priya, they will be arranged to defend you, a crescent of shields and archers, with whip or dagger wielders within it, to keep Chandra's forces at bay and their fire too. As long as you can work through a barrier, I can't bring down a whole city," said Priya swiftly. Her heart was hammering again. She felt almost suffocated by Malini's weight against her. She could not do what Malini wanted. She could not. "I barely survived bringing down the river, Malini." She trailed off. Malini was still leaning into her. It was, Priya realized, as if Malini was afraid that if she let go, Priya would vanish entirely. "It would be," Malini said, "a last resort." Priya exhaled through an ache in her lungs she couldn't put name to. "How can you look at me so tenderly and ask me to die for you?" "What would you have done if I hadn't come?" Priya asked. "What then?" "I would have faced all my battles with everything in me," said Malini. "I would have struggled with Mahesh's faith and his loyalties. I would have watched Rao seek to turn from me back to my brother's light again and again. And I would have kept on fighting, Priya, for all that I want and all that I deserve. And I would have lost." Her eyes fluttered closed. "I may lose still, but I cannot let Chandra win. Let Aditya be forced onto the throne if he must. Let me die. But Chandra cannot have it." The kind of power Malini was asking her to use was not power Priya had. The kind of power she had used in the river. It was Yaksa born, Yaksa gifted, and it came with a price. The Yaksa in the Sangam had wanted something from her. The Yaksa had made her vow to give something. More than she had, more than her heart. What was left to give? What could the Yaksa who lay beyond this world, who were gone, want from Priya now in return for the strength to win Malini's war? And was Priya willing to give it? "I can't believe we're having this kind of conversation like this," Priya said eventually. "Like what?" "With you clinging to me." "I'm not clinging," Malini said. "Really?" "Clinging doesn't sound very dignified." Malini's voice was faintly disgruntled, even through her fear, even through everything. Priya felt a lance of fondness. Priya placed her hand around Malini's wrist. Maybe Malini thought Priya wanted to untangle them from each other because her grip tightened, nails against the skin of Priya's belly, cloth scrunched tightly in her hand. "If I can't hold on to you, then I can hold on to no one," Malini said quietly. "And here, now, what else can I do?" Priya swallowed. How lonely it was to have power. How lonely. Priya was glad suddenly of the home she'd left behind. Broken Regent's Mahal, Bilu lording over his kitchens and Kalida's glares, Gannam grumpy and steady and sure, and even Kritika with her fanatic desire for a better world. And Rook growing taller and stronger, more sure of himself every day, as Padma learned to kick her tiny legs and shape the shadows of words, grasping the world with her fingers, like every little bit of it was wondrous to her. Maybe by the time she returned home, Padma would be walking in truth, speaking, for all that she feared for her family, for Bhumika, for all of them. She still had hoped that something golden and true was waiting for her. "Hold on to me, then," Priya said, and pressed her lips to Malini's eyebrow, her cheek, her jaw, drew her down onto the bed. It was hours later in the dark after the candles had died when Priya finally turned and touched her forehead to Malini's, shared breath with her again. "I'll do it. If it comes to it, I'll fight with all I have." Malini's next exhale was a shudder. She cupped Priya's cheek, said nothing as Priya whispered battle plans to her like they were love stories. "When this ends," Malini said finally in a voice like a scrap of silk, like a fragile weft against Priya's lips, her hands. "When I am alive and I am Empress, when you have everything I vowed to you and Ahiranya." Silence, as Malini cupped Priya's waist with her hand, as she stretched her fingers wide, as if she could encompass it, hold Priya, and keep her. "I've dreamt of garlanding you," Malini confessed, "a small, secret thing. Flowers around your throat, and you garlanding me in return. The two of us making our own promises to each other. I've dreamt of naming you my own, my heart, my wife." Priya swallowed. Her heart ached, and it was like a whole self ached with it. "That's a cruel thing to let yourself dream of," she whispered. "Isn't it?" "It is," Malini agreed, sounding wretched and yet sweet, sweet because she was Priya's. "And yet, women could marry women once in Ahiranya, and in my foolish dreams I can't forget that." Priya blinked back tears. Silly of her. They were like children, weren't they? Wanting things they shouldn't when there were bigger things than the both of them shaping the world, and those forces would wash them away without a care. There was something living in Priya's skin and her soul. There was a throne waiting for Malini's future, and yet. She took Malini's hand from her hip, guided it up until Malini's warm fingers were against the nape of her neck. Until Malini was drawing Priya close, and Priya's fingers were moving, tracing Malini's bare ribs, her breasts, the flower at her throat. "This is my garland," her own fingers pressing against the chain at Malini's neck and the flower that lay there. Malini's hand on her skin. "And this is yours." Perhaps Malini understood because she cupped the back of Priya's neck and kissed her deeply, sweetly, traced a circle ever so gently against the first point of Priya's spine. This could be the last time, Priya realized, the last time they lay next to each other in the dark, the last time they were both together alive, the last time they kissed. But how Priya hoped it would not be. The morning came, cold and pale, and the army readied itself for war. Priya found Sima waiting with Lata. When Priya approached, Lata rose to her feet, giving Priya a nod of greeting before walking away. "What were you talking about?" Sima shook her head. "It doesn't matter. What is it, Priya?" Priya stepped forward, kneeled down. "Please," said Priya, "don't follow me into the next battle. The last one was bad." "Terrible," Sima agreed. "This one is going to be worse," Priya said. She'd seen the look on Malini's face, haunted, almost gutted by the knowledge that both failure and success were so very close, but failure was closer. I'd feel so much better if you stayed away, like Lady Deepa." "I'd rather be like Lady Razia," said Sima, "leading my own little army around." Sima shuffled closer to Priya. "You made a promise to me, Pri," she added, a quiet, firm voice. "You promised I'd be by your side in the next battle. Well, it's here. It is. And I'm not letting you break that promise. You can say what you like, but I'm going with you." "Sima," Priya murmured, helpless. "It's my choice." Her tone brooked no argument, but Sima was watching her carefully, waiting to see what she'd say. "This time you're not going into battle unprotected," said Priya finally. "No snatching up shields at the last minute, all right? And your bow won't be enough. We need to get you something more. Better. You won't be able to rely on me, so we'll have to make sure you can protect yourself. I'll get it sorted." Sima smiled then and nudged her arm against Priya's. "Thank you," she said. "No thanks needed," said Priya. we protect each other. On the last leg of the army's journey to Harshingar, Priya made her way to Ashutosh. She offered Ashutosh the bow of an equal, shoulders straight, inclining her head. Surrounded by his men, he bowed in return, expression wary. "Prince Ashutosh," Priya said, "you owe me a favor." His eyes narrowed. "I owe you no such thing." "I saved your life." She smiled at him, aiming for charm and achieving something that made his right eyebrow twitch. Obnoxiousness, maybe? "Come now, we're fellow leaders of an army, aren't we? Warriors in the service of our empress." His nostrils flared. "Tell me what you want," he said. "Armor," she told him. "For my fellow Ahirani woman, armor to keep her alive." "And something else," she added. "Something for the battle. If you're brave enough and you believe your men may be willing to work with the Ahirani witch that saved their lives." "Shut up about life-saving, I beg you," he muttered. Then he said, "Speak, and don't insult the bravery of my men again." One of Ashutosh's men that she'd healed back in Sakata was small. He had spare armor, a little dented but serviceable, that were given over to Priya for Sima's use. It was Priya who helped Sima dress and bind the plates over her salwar kameez, tying severe knots into fabric and metal to hold it all in place. "You should have gotten something for yourself too," Sima said. Priya shook her head. "I carry my armor with me," she said, and there was nothing in Ashutosh's possession, or in the possession of any in this army, that would protect her from the fire. The only thing that had saved her in Sakata had been the Yaksa wearing Bhumika's face, the Yaksa's magic within her. She wasn't sure if she wanted to save her again, but she would do whatever she had to do. Today, she and Sima climbed into their own chariot. Lata watched, something dark in her eyes, her shawl drawn tight around her shoulders by her white-knuckled hands. "Doesn't the Empress need you?" Priya asked. "The Empress has already said her goodbyes to me and all of us," said Lata, "including you." "I tried to change her mind again, as did Lady Razia." She met Priya's gaze. "I should have known if she would not fight with you by her side, she would not take any of us." "You sages," Priya said with a smile. "I was always told you could see too much." "The gift and curse of all who seek knowledge," Lata said dryly. "Perhaps I will see you again, Elder Priya." Her expression was so very grave. "I shall hope that I do, but I must admit, our situation looks somewhat dire." Priya wanted to say something brave, or funny, wanted to laugh, and show her teeth, and tell Lata that of course she'd survive. No, perhaps, was necessary. But Priya knew better, and Lata did too. "Perhaps," Priya agreed instead. Lata inclined her head and stepped back, and then the charioteer clicked his teeth and raised the reins, and then they were on the move, the chariot racing over the ground, the rumble of an entire army surrounding them.